Section 4.5 is the properties of matter. So, what is a property? So, a property is any characteristics that can be measured. So, it can be a lot of different things. And some examples are density, color, mass, volume, length, malleability, which means like how, if you can form your matter into something, melting point, hardness, odor, temperature, and many other things. That does not include everything. So, what are some of the different properties between salt and sugar? So, they have some of that are the same, right? So, what is the same about salt and sugar? Well, they're both white, right? They both are crystalline. They both form crystals, all right? They are both solids at room temperature. I'm going to say RT for that. All right. So they're very similar. And they're both, you can eat them, right? They're, what would we call it? I don't know. Can eat. Let's say that. However, they do have some differences. So, right, salt is actually has a different taste, right, than sugar. Salt will not melt. So, salt does not melt. Or sugar can melt. So sugar has a lower boiling point. Sugar can be formed into cubes. You can't really make a salt cube. They have different properties, but some are similar and some are different. But we can use the properties to define our matter, and they give us different ways of talking about it. So there's two different types of properties here. So the physical property is one that can be observed without changing the matter. So that's one you can just observe, such as color or things like that. A chemical property describes how a substance may change to form other substances. So it's how it reacts with other chemicals, such as acids or water or something like that. So some example of physical properties are color, texture, luster, which is how shiny something is, conductivity, that means if it conducts electricity or not. So some things are good at conducting electricity, like metals. Others are not, such as ceramics, and so that's why we use them as insulators. Melting point, smell, malleability, which I talked about before. Some chemical properties are radioactivity, if something is radioactive or not. Flammability, how it reacts to fire. Is it corrosive? Is it an acid? Will it eat things away? Will it react strongly with other elements? Or is it maybe it's inert, kind of like a gas, kind of like the noble gases? Um, Conductivity can also be a chemical property. If it's toxic, that is a chemical property, and also pH. So pH refers to the acidity or basic, or if it's basic. So like whether it's a bleach or a vinegar. You guys might be familiar with pH from dealing with either fish tanks, that's important in fish tanks, and also in pools. There are two more definitions here that we can talk about with properties. Properties have a lot of definitions. The first one is intensive. So that is a property that's independent of the amount of sample. So an example of that could be boiling point, or color, or melting point, smell, whether it's crystalline, if it's a solid, things like that. An extensive property is a property that is dependent on the amount of samples. So remember, a property is anything we can measure. So we can measure volume and mass and shape. So these could be dependent on the amount of the samples. That is an extensive property.